Hey folks, welcome back to the Inside the Mix podcast. In this episode, I'm very excited, as I say in all episodes, because I am, to welcome our guests today, Philipp and Dan, aka Year of the Fool. So Year of the Fool is a synthwave, retrowave band that blends nostalgia for the music and movies of the 1980s with the electronic melancholy of modern life. Philipp and Dan are going to share with us their story, how they collaborate in the digital realm, the songwriting and production process, and the story behind their new album, Love on a Dying Planet. Hello, Philipp and Dan. Thanks for joining me, and how are you?
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're doing really good. Really appreciate being here.
No, it's brilliant having you on here. I'm really looking forward to this one because you're in a position whereby you collaborate. We're going to go into this in a bit more detail in a bit, but you collaborate across the world, essentially. So where are you joining us from today?
So I'm joining from Stuttgart, Germany.
And I'm in San Francisco, California.
Yeah, so quite a gap there in terms of distance. So I'm really looking forward to sort of digging in to see and find out how you go about the creative process. But we'll get to that. But first, what I want to go through is a bit of background. So the life before Year of the Fool. So from your bio, you discovered synthwave almost by accident. A child of the 80s, long-time fans of electronic music, but never imagined making it. So if I start off with yourself, Dan, can you tell our audience a bit about your musical life prior to Year of the Fool? How did it all begin?
Yeah, well, for me, actually, words really came before music. I was always a kid that was drawn to language, drawn to words. From some of my earliest memories, scribbling in my Dr. Seuss books, writing my own lyrics in there. And I can recall when I was a very young kid, my parents would ask me what I wanted to be, and I said a poet. For a lower middle class family from New York, they were like, essentially, what's that? What does that mean? So yeah, just always drawn to, I think, trying to make sense of the world through language. And then in high school, I had a few friends who played instruments, and we were at somebody's house, and they were fiddling around trying to play some Led Zeppelin very poorly. And they asked me, hey, why don't you bang on some garbage cans, put some percussion in here to see what it's all about. And so I started to do that. And then I was also inadvertently singing while that was happening. And one of the guitarists at one point was like, you know what? Why don't you sing? Don't worry about the drums. Just go sing. And yeah, it kind of evolved from there. Eventually learned some guitar and realized that I could put the stuff that I was writing incessantly in notebooks all over to music. And yeah, so joined some, like a band in high school, and progressively have been involved with singing and songwriting for most of my life after that.
Amazing. I love the idea that you started out as a poet, or you wanted to get into poetry and came at it from that angle. I love the way you put, I've made a note over here, sense of the world through language. I think that's a fantastic phrase to describe how you're using language to, make sense of the world. I think that's brilliant. So correct me if I'm wrong then, you are the singer. Would that be right for Year of the Fool? Because I noticed you mentioned there about you sing, or you were encouraged to sing. Yeah,
that's right. Yep. I do a large majority of the singing, and, 4 vocals and back vocals, and yeah.
Fantastic. So my same question to you then, Philipp. How did it all begin for you?
So back in the 80s, my parents enrolled me in an early music education program, which was pretty popular back then in the 80s. And I realized very quickly that I hated it with a passion. And also, I think the teachers let my parents know on very clear terms that they shouldn't have very high hopes when it comes to like me and music production. So yeah, I kind of like, until I was, I think 12 or 13, I grew up thinking like making music wasn't for me. And then I picked up a guitar. I took some lessons. I taught myself. And then, I discovered that maybe I wasn't a hopeless case after all. And then actually I joined a hardcore band when I was 14. So,
wow.
Yeah, I know, being a frequent listener to this podcast, that this is a recurring theme here, that people have joined metal bands and hardcore bands before they discovered their love for synthwave music. So yeah, so I was in a hardcore band, and I played bass for them for I think 4 or 5 years. And yeah, we had gigs all over Germany and some outside Germany. Yeah, but that's how it all started.
Amazing. Yeah, you are right in that sense. Listening to the podcast, you find that a lot of artists do come from the metal and hardcore background, and then find their way into this kind of softer aesthetic and this softer sound and of synthwave. So going back there, what you said about music education, because I don't think you're the first person that I've interviewed that have said that they it happened for me as well, that when you were younger, like you had teachers and they said actually you're probably not going to get much out of them in terms of music, or they just put up straight up gatekeeper you in terms of music. What Can you remember why that was? Was it at the time you just didn't have an interest, or was there a particular reason?
I think it was just limiting, to be confronted with a lot of things that I was confronted with in school anyway, and it felt like going to school. It didn't feel like fun. It didn't feel like I was like creatively expressing myself. So in a way, it just didn't feel like fun. It didn't feel like an activity, like an after-school activity that should be fun, right? And so I only discovered that music was fun after that. So yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of in a way like I guess if you are pushed into doing something, or you're pushed into doing something, you don't necessarily want to do, or it's not the way you want to do it. And it's going to take the fun out of it. And then I kind of found that myself really when I've been doing various projects in the past. And it's only when I decide that actually it's sort of like, this is the way I want to do it, rather than someone tell me the way it should be done. I find more enjoyment in it, and freedom as well. Because I think sometimes education can be a bit limiting, particularly, I'm not knocking education here. Education is great. Don't get me wrong, but I think sometimes they have a curriculum they have to stick to. And I think that can be a bit limiting sometimes. But moving on, so going on to your bio. So over time, you began introducing electronic elements into your music, and you mentioned bands, the Postal Service, the Notvist. I've never heard of those actually, so I might come back to that in a minute. The Midnight and Kavinsky, I have heard of. So if I start with yourself, Dan, was there like a seminal piece of music or an artist or a band that had a really big impact on you as a musician in the first instance?
I have kind of a unique story. I grew up on a pretty healthy diet of classic rock through my parents, and being a child of the '80s, obviously things like Michael Jackson and Culture Club were around on the radio all the time. And then in sort of my teen years, I got very into like improvisational, like the Grateful Dead, like jam band type of music. I was always excited by experimentation, kind of in the moment, and also drawn to like writing like the beatnik poets that had a similar kind of vibe to them. And so bands like the Counting Crows, Pearl Jam were also big influences kind of in the 90s on me. In terms of synth style music, I think, one of the first things that I can remember is Philip and I went with a friend. It was when we were living in Boston together. We went up to Vermont, Burlington, and we ended up seeing a movie, the movie Drive, with Ryan Gosling, and it has a synthwave score, and we came out of that movie and we were like, what was that? That was like, the music is so good. It's so interesting. And it sort of stuck with us over the years. And I think when we were making music together already at that point, but we were making more like singer-songwriter style music. But that was always, I think it was kind of baking. It took some time to cook up and get into the actual music itself. So I think that, Kavinsky and Electric Youth are two of the two that are in there, that I think really started us down the road toward synthwave music.
Yeah, I think Drive is it's like the common denominator when it comes to synth music. I think if you aren't already interested in it as a musician, as a creative, and you're interested in remotely in electronic music, if you watch Drive, I think it does lend itself well to influencing you as an artist to actually go and create that music. So you mentioned you were doing like the singer-songwriter sort of music before then. When you watched Drive, what were your thoughts in terms of actually creating that music? Did you think, actually, you know what, that music, it sounds quite accessible, it sounds quite easy. Easy might be the wrong word, but did it appear like it could be easier to create? If that makes any sense.
Not necessarily. It took, I think it took some time to really settle in with us. What we were doing this singer-songwriter stuff, and I think, over the years that we've been making music together, probably maybe even a decade worth of time, we were getting, I think, a little bored by that sound and style, and it just seemed kind of typical. And so we sort of started to like work in some electric or electronic style sound into that music at first, and then it just sort of grew from there. I think one of the things we've joked about is that our first album as Year of the Fall, our first really synth album, we wrote the first 4 songs of that album without even know what synthwave was, the term.
Oh, wow.
And so we liked this certain style and we were trying to incorporate it. And then we heard more of it and we thought, oh, if we tweak this or we fix this a little bit, it could have this type of beat, this type of sound. And suddenly it was evolving and morphing into a little bit more solidly synthwave, which I think you can kind of hear it in the album. If you listen closely, you can hear some of the songs sound a little bit more traditional synthwave and others sound like right on the border.
I really like that approach there, and I mean it might be happenstance that it occurred in terms of you actually weren't aware of synthwave, but yet you sort of started to go in that direction, and I think that's quite a good way to do it. I mean it's difficult to do now. I know you're aware it exists, but I think in doing that you don't, because it's quite easy. I think easy again is probably the wrong word, but with synthwave to follow a formula. That makes sense, where you might have some big pads, an arpeggiator, some lead synths, some high strings, and then you do 4/4. There's a bit of you can have a formula for it. So I think having not experienced it, I thought probably like releases your creativity a bit more, and then you find it, and then you start bringing in those elements. I don't know what you think. I think that's probably quite a good thing.
Oh, totally. I feel like not knowing the formula to it also open us up to certain things that are also not very typical for synthwave. So if you listen to our first album, for example, we have a song, there are no drums on it. So the last song has no drums, is more like a synth choral kind of a meditative song. I mean, you have these things in chillwave, for example, but so all of these things. So I wrote this song probably 5 years before I heard the term synthwave, and we really wanted to keep those songs when we knew that was the direction that we wanted to go in. When we discovered bands like The Midnight, and we said, "Oh, okay, that might be a direction that we can agree on," because we struggled, finding a musical direction that we wanted to go to after leaving that singer-songwriter path. And I remember distinctly that we had all these bands that we were thrown around in conversations and be like, should this be the goal or should this be the goal? And so you mentioned the Postal Service before. So that was our first goal. We were like, wow, this is, the greatest band ever. We want to sound like the Postal Service. And we never did for several reasons. But yeah, I think not having that framework, not having that recipe in mind, and still creating synthwave music really liberated us in a sense. And I think we still benefit from this today, although I think I know a little bit what the recipe is now, and I think it also shows in our newer songs a little bit more. But still, I think it's very liberating to have a framework. But at the same time, not to stick to that framework at all times. I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's a fantastic thing to do. It's like you say, it's great having a framework because it gives you a point of reference if you are struggling for inspiration or ideas. But in the same breath, it means that you can create something unique, as you say there. Like with you mentioned the track at the end where there's no drums. So Philip, sort of like the same question to you what I asked Dan. So with regards to, you mentioned you were in a hardcore band. But growing up, was there a particular artist or band that had a really big impact on you as a musician?
You mean besides Slayer? Or no.
Are you a Slayer fan?
Oh yeah, I love Slayer. They were so good. So, and I was big involved in the German metalcore scene. So I loved like Caliban and Heaven Shelter.
Caliban.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say, those were my like biggest musical influences. But if I would have to say like which album influenced me the most, it would probably be Radiohead's OK Computer. Till today, that's still my favorite album. And so back then I was still making like hardcore music, and I hadn't heard like these electronic influences in that kind of music, and it really struck a chord with me. And I could relate to the lyrics a lot, to talking about social alienation, uncontrolled consumerism. The artwork was fantastic. So yeah, that album influenced me deeply. Yeah,
it's amazing the way you describe it. It's like a full package, isn't it? When you got not just the music, you got the artwork and the message behind it and everything that goes with it. Now, that's a fantastic choice. And just circling back to about Caliban there, I hadn't heard that band name. Somebody mentioned Caliban in so long. I used to gig in a venue where I'm from in the southwest of the UK, and the promoter, the guy who owned the venue, he used to play Caliban all the time. This was probably about 12 years ago.
Yeah, they're still going.
Are they still going?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I've made a note of it. I'm going to go and have a look and see what they're up to.
I haven't heard any of their albums in the recent years, but I know I recently looked them up on I think on Wikipedia or something, and they're still going. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to know. I mean, longevity, that's fantastic. I'm going to go, just for nostalgic purposes, for my own gratification, I'm going to go look up Caliban. So what I'd like to move on to next, is sort of the birth of the Year of the Fool. So, as we mentioned earlier, you are living on opposite sides of the Atlantic. So the two of you met whilst volunteering in Boston, and within days you were making music together. So can you what inspired you to work together and create music? How did it all begin? Either one of you can chime in here. I didn't really direct that question, did I?
I could take that one. I think, to be honest, that was in 2003. So here we are, 20 years later, essentially. And I really truly believe that Philipp and I are kind of soulmates in that way. We met through this volunteer community where we both lived, where we worked in a homeless shelter during the day. And then we actually lived in an apartment together, like an intentional community. And so I can remember having a conversation about music the first day we knew each other. So I had this notebook that I kept, where I would just jot things down, ideas, mainly for poetry and for short stories and other things that I was writing about at that time. And Philipp played me a recording of a song that he had been working on. And I took my notebook out and picked something. And we started to make music together. And that was in, within the first couple of days of knowing each other. And so, we would make this music like in the evenings. It was a very fun situation. We, get like a pizza and we were recording then on literally our first song we recorded was on a headphone microphone. So it was one of those like little ones where the mic came down, and we used to call it the Britney Spears microphone.
Yeah. Sammy Hagar. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would like hold it in front of my face, the little microphone piece, and sing that way. At that time we're using, these ancient computers that were, had been in the house for us when we arrived. And as you can imagine, the sound quality was interesting, and we were always trying to figure out ways to make it sound better. And what are we doing wrong? And Philipp is kind of a genius in that way, so he was doing the work on that mainly. But yeah, that's kind of how we got started. And like I said, 20 years, two different kind of band names and styles. But I don't see us stopping anytime soon.
That's amazing. 20 years is quite a feat, isn't it? That's a long breadth of time. I like the fact they used the Sammy Hagar, Britney Spears microphone to record. I think a lot of musicians go down that route and recording. I remember when I first started out, and we had a USB microphone. I think it was a USB microphone. We put it in a sock and hung it from the ceiling, and we recorded a demo doing it that way. Yeah, this was in a friend of mine's bedroom, and he had drums set up. Man, it was
clean socks. I hope.
I couldn't guarantee that, but it sounded horrific. But yeah, I think we as artists, we sort of start out doing that, and then you learn as time progresses. But I think one question I've got, because you mentioned that you started this in 2003. What has kept you creating music together for so long? Is there like a key to that whole scenario?
Well, I think the base for that is definitely our friendship, I'd say. We're not only creating music together, but we see each other quite a lot. We spend a lot of time with each other. And I think that was always the best basis for also having a creative output that we produce together. So I really think that was also something that like kept us together back in the day when I moved back to Germany. So I lived first in the US from 2002 to 2004, and then I moved back to Germany. And I mean, back then, you couldn't like just jump on FaceTime every day and talk to each other. So I mean, we were still having phone conversations, but we were also like sending music back and forth. And I think that was like a way of communicating. And I mean, back then we like recorded stuff and burned it on a CD, and then we sent it via postal mail,
Wow, yeah.
So, but it was a way that really kept us together in our friendship and really kept our friendship alive also. And yeah, I really think that's one foundation definitely for the music.
Brilliant. It's great. It's amazing what music can do, isn't it? In terms of bringing people together and keeping them together, and you have that common shared interest that keeps you going. It's a fantastic story. And like I said, 20 years is brilliant to have individuals.
Funny, I didn't realize it was 20 years before you said it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it, when you quantify it?
Yeah.
I mean, I was in a band for 8 or 9 years, and but yeah, 20 years is impressive, and it's amazing. And what's more is doing it transatlantically is fantastic. So sort of like it's a nice segue into my next question, which is this is probably directed more at you, Philipp, as the technician behind the duo. Sort of like the unique way that you create music in the digital space, the back and forth of ideas. How does that work in terms of, like, if you say you're starting to write the new album, how do you bounce those ideas back and forth? What is the process you go through to start a song, let's say?
So it has changed a bit. So like what we used to do is that I would record some music and I would send it to Dan over the internet. He would listen to that. Then he would write the lyrics. And then we'd have some kind of conversation about it. But now we really found a solution where we can really, I still write the songs on my own and start the music production process on my own, but so at some point I get Dan on board, and so we have a technical setup where we can work in the same DAW, and where we can work on music, but where we can also record the vocals. So, and I think that really helps, that feeling that you're really in the same room, a remote recording solution, as opposed to sending over stuff and then waiting for 6 weeks to get a reply, or, to talk about it on the phone or something like that. So that really is much more of an immediate creative connection also.
Fantastic. So are you, just to get a clearer picture, so you've got your door open, and has Dan got his door open? Are you doing it? Because I know there is software that allows you to do that.
So interestingly, I very recently switched from Cubase to Logic, and Cubase had its own remote recording solution, but I never used that for some reason. It was so freaking complicated, and I don't know. I just never got around it really. And now what we do is, and I think probably the listeners think that's crazy and a little bit complicated. But so the way that we do it is that Dan has his DAW open on his computer. I log into his computer via TeamViewer, and he has a plugin on the master bus that streams high quality audio. And I'm listening to that stream, so I can, listen to dancing, and then, we can record together. That obviously also works vice versa when we work on music or something. But yeah, so it's basically with the plugin. It's called Listen To by a company called Audio Movers. And it's really cool. It's really easy. You just really slap it on the stereo bus, and you just hit the button, start streaming, and the sound's really good.
That's amazing. I'm certainly going to look into that, because I've been in situations whereby I've worked remotely with artists from a production point of view, and it's always I haven't dedicated enough time to go and investigate what options are available. But I love the idea of being able to, as you say, using Listen To and Audio Movers and streaming high quality audio back to the other person, or they're streaming it back to me. No, I love that idea. So my next question is for you, Dan, and this is in particular. So if you're the performer and you're recording your voice, and then Philipp is listening and feeding back, what is that like? What is that sort of scenario? How does that feel? Because usually in a recording studio, you'd have somebody on the other side of the glass, or maybe sat next to you and you've got headphones on and you're recording, but there's someone in the room with you. What is it like when there's someone talking to you through headphones, but they're not actually in the room with you when you're recording?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, just relative to the way we were doing it before, it's so much better. Cool. Because, before we would, after we kind of got the song in a place where we felt like it was ready to lay down the vocals, Philipp would send, the whole track, and I would just get my microphone out and go to my spare room and literally record by myself the whole song. So I would do, all the vocals, all the background vocals, all the harmony parts, all just by myself in a room. And then I would send it to Philipp, and he would do his best to make it sound good. And then sometimes we need to re-record things, but very often not. So it's very limiting in that way. And also he couldn't react to anything. The reaction was delayed by however long it would take him to listen to it. And I would record 50 parts. So, he had to sit down and listen to each part and see how they sounded and how they fit together and all that stuff. So yeah, to have the feedback kind of instantaneously, and to, Philipp has got a really, really good ear for music. So for him to be like, oh, it was right on pitch, or the harmony part sounded great, and that makes me feel more confident in the process and in my vocals. And yeah, so I think it's been really good. And to be honest, it feels, we've never been in a recording studio to have someone behind the glass, but it kind of feels the same. Like he's piping into my headphones that I have on right now, usually his voice. And so I can hear him like he's right there. So it's pretty amazing. And I feel like it's really taken our music to the next level.
Fantastic. I suppose, echoing what you said there, in a recording studio situation, you would have somebody talking to you through your headphones anyway. So I guess it just means that the individual isn't there with you in the building. They're just somewhere else, but it's still the same process. And I totally get what you're saying there, whereby you're getting that real-time feedback rather than you sing, record, send across, Philipp listens, goes through each of the recordings, feeds back, and then you overdub, and I can see how the process that you guys have is so much more efficient and makes so much more sense, having that real-time feedback, which is fantastic. And I think for the audience listening, actually, hopefully they'll get some inspiration in terms of what they can achieve, because I know there's a lot of collaboration in synth music, and it's happening all the time. So hopefully they're listening to this and they're checking out the plugins, as you mentioned there, like Listen To by Audio Movers. I'll research that and I'll put a link in the show notes for it for the audience. But it'd be interesting for those listening to feedback on what their experiences are rather. So please do. If you do go down that route, feedback to me, because I'd be really interested to know. So once again, this moves quite nicely onto my next part, which is the release. Well, you've got an impending sort of release, or you've got an album. But what I like to touch on first is the song that you've released recently, which is "Choose the Machine." If I'm is that correct?
Chose the Machine.
Chose the Machine. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes here. My terrible typing. Chose the Machine. So that's from the up and coming new album, Love on a Dying Planet. I've got that bit right, haven't I?
That's right.
Yeah, fantastic. So my question to you, Philip, is how did that production start? Did it start with yourself, or did it start with Dan, with the songwriting?
So that production started with myself, and I remember very clearly how that started. So there's a synth in the very beginning, the first art that the song starts with. So I found that preset, and I absolutely love that preset, and that is how often my songwriting starts. I like go through presets for 3 hours, and then I find something, and then I take another couple of hours to really make it my own, put effects on it, play around with the filters, with the oscillators, and so on. And I found that preset, and it sounded so cool. That was immediately the foundation of the song. And I remember specifically also about that preset that it was a preset by Timecop 1983 for the what is it, LX or something. So it's that Juno 6 emulation. And there's a website out there called the Patch Bay. I use that quite a lot. They have really amazing presets. By the Midnight for Diva, for example, or by Michael Oakley for Silent One, another synth that I use quite a lot. They have presets by Luftroom, which is like an amazing Danish sound designer. And I found that preset. And I absolutely fell in love with it, and then I just structured the whole song around that.
Fantastic! It's great to hear that you use presets as well, because I've had the conversation with a few artists on here about presets, and I think most people do it the way you mentioned there, which is you find a preset you like, which might take a bit of time, as you mentioned, and then you sort of make it and twist it into your own. I mean, I do in my productions all the time. It's kind of like reinventing the wheel, but I've never spent much time with Patch Bay, and I think I'm going to. I'm going to investigate it and have a look at what's available on there, and check out these different artists and the sounds and sound designs they've uploaded. So going back to what you mentioned there about your synths that you're using, so you say you've got Silent and you've got the Tal emulation as well. What other synths do you use, or do you have any hardware, or is it just
no? Unfortunately not. I haven't stepped into that realm yet. I would very much like to. I mean, it's always a budget thing, obviously, and I mean, therefore you have to make a smart choice, unless you have the budget to buy 3 synths at once or something. So I haven't stepped into that yet. I would very much like to. But yeah, so my main 3 synth is really I use Diva quite a lot, and I find that also to be very versatile. I mean, it's really a collection of the greatest monophonic, polyphonic synths out there, I think. And I think if you really dig deep into that synth, it's really great. Silent One, some people I think hate it, some love it. I really love it. I think it's a great synth to really do synthwave music. And again, so there are great presets out there for Silent One in particular. So I love the presets that are out there by Michael Oakley. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I absolutely love that synth. And then I use Native Instruments synth quite a bit for things here and there. But those 3 that I mentioned are the main synth that I use. But yeah, obviously, I mean, if I find something somewhere else, I'll use a different synth. But those are the 3 main synths. Fantastic.
I sort of adopt a similar approach. I've got 3 main synths that I use, and and like yourself, I'd love to have hardware, but as you say, it is a budgetary thing, because it is expensive. And when you've got these great emulations, and also I think I think I had this conversation with an artist, I can't remember the artist's name now, but they said a similar thing whereby they actually prefer working in the box and rather than having the hardware there, and they can get distracted by the hardware. And I mean, you can just tinker for hours with a piece of hardware, but then the other flip side to that, I guess, is that you've got something tangible that you can play. But it'd be nice having that conundrum, but I don't have it, unfortunately, much like you, because of budget. But so that's great. So we've got the production side of things behind that track. So Dan, my question to you now is the lyric behind it and the theme and the concept. Can you tell our audience a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, we had so prior to that song being written, we had an idea for a concept album, which is what we're in the process of making with Love on a Dying Planet. It's actually a song cycle in 8 parts. So we chose The Machine as the first part, and we're in process on the second part as we speak. And so we had this storyline in mind. And actually the song that we put together first was like the 4th song. So we kind of have that in our back pocket, but we knew we needed to go a little bit further back in the timeline of the story. And one of the concepts of the story, it's kind of a graphic novel. It's like a dystopian love story. Is kind of how we've been describing it. And one of the main characters, who's called Nate, N8, is essentially decided that he's experienced grief for the loss of a loved one, and he's decided that he wants to be less human, so he doesn't have to feel as much pain. And so he literally chooses to become part machine in order to alleviate some of that pain. And so we kind of had that story kind of in the back of our heads. I've been in particular thinking a lot about the mechanization of our lives, and as we're on a call across thousands of miles here, there's so much that technology makes possible, but I think in some ways it can also impact us negatively. And so that's something that's when we were getting into synthwave, we thought, wow, this style could speak to some of those themes with the feeling of the electric sound and electricity sort of running through it at its base. And so, yeah, when Philipp sent that song over, I had already had this idea. I had scribbled in my notebook, I chose the machine. That one line. And as soon as he sent it and I heard it, and it was immediate, that was going to fit really nicely with the music. And this happens sometimes. It's from a songwriting perspective, I always tell people that ask me about it, just write everything down, whether it's on your phone or in a notebook, whatever, your preferences, but don't let inspiration go, because it's coming from somewhere, it's bubbling up. So write it down, and you never know when you're going to use it. In this particular case, I wrote the lyrics really quickly. They came, almost within a half an hour for the whole thing. I often walk when I write. San Francisco's, a great walking city. Mild climate, you can go outside all year round, and so I was often walk around, and the lyrics just came really naturally and easily on that particular one.
Amazing. I like the concept you have there, the idea of technology. And as you say, you can see the good in technology as we are now. I'm in the UK. Philip, you're in Germany. Dan, you're in the States. And we're able to talk all at the same time via technology and record this, which is amazing. But in the same breath, I think technology, there are negative elements to it as well. And I love the idea of someone sort of using technology to escape, because I think it lends itself quite well to sort of what we experience now with VR and augmented reality. And as we get deeper and deeper into that realm in terms of being able to escape from our own realities into something else, it's a really, really cool concept, and the dystopian themes around it. So my question next is, so you got this 8-part album. did you flesh out the ideas for the album before you start writing the songs? Do you think, right, okay, I'm going to create a proverbial mood board, as it were, of ideas, and then we start writing songs for the album? Or does it sort of work the other way? How does that work? Do you flesh out the ideas and the concept first and then start songwriting?
I think it really depends. So I think we have the whole story developed. We know how it ends. So Dan has that whole story developed, and we know how it ends. And certainly in the songwriting process, I very much look into the notes that he sends me on that story a lot. But yeah, it's different from song to song. I mean, sometimes, I sometimes also I have ideas for songs and they might not fit to a certain part of the story. So I either make them fit or we take them for a different song. But yeah, I think we go back and forth with that in terms of like, with the music or with also the artwork, we're influencing the story a little bit, and with the story, we're certainly influencing the artwork and the music quite a lot. So I think, yeah, it's a process that goes back and forth, definitely.
Yeah, cool. I thought that might be the response in that terms of that back and forth, and it's something that I need to work on myself, and I'm sure the audience listening probably in a similar position, whereby fleshing out ideas and that back and forth. Sometimes I'm totally stuck for concept. It's probably the hardest part, I think, in terms of songwriting for me personally, is coming up with an idea. Yeah. I think I'm very much the technician when it comes to songwriting, right, in terms of I can produce, I can mix and do all the editing and stuff. But when it actually comes to the songwriting side of things, I think that's where I probably struggle the most. And I probably need to do more of what Dan was saying just now, which is whereby when I have an idea is to write it down and just write everything down. And then at least that way you can get rid of what you don't need, but at least you're in a position whereby you've got something. So yeah, I really do like that approach. I think it's great. What my next question is it's going to probably test your memories a bit now. So one of my favorite tracks on the first album is Low Battery Days. I think that's a fantastic track, and I'm fairly certain it's the first track I listened to of yours way back when. I think it was a friend of mine who sort of signposted me in your direction. So can you tell us a bit about that particular song? So that's Low Battery Days. If I go with you, Dan, what was the concept and the idea behind Low Battery Days?
Well, it was definitely born out of some personal experience, and a lot of times what I do when I'm thinking about a song is I infuse my personal experience as kind of where it comes from, and then it often takes kind of a direction of its own. So in my mind, it became a character in the song. But essentially, it was about, and I think a lot of people can probably relate to this, but it's about, you're working a full-time day job, and it's really taking a lot of your, I don't want to say your soul, but maybe your vital essence, because you're grinding and working long hours, and there's not a lot left at the end of the day. And so that's really kind of the seed of the song. And I remember I can remember when Philipp first sent it to me. I was actually living in Denver at that time. And I remember we often work through Dropbox, where he'll put something in for me, and it's always a treat to get something new. And I took it out, I put it in the headphones and took it out with me to a park that was down the street. And I remember thinking, this feels like it could express what I was thinking about that time in my life. And got right to it. I think if I recall correctly, it was one of these situations where I wrote the first verse really quickly, and then the second verse came later. And that tends to happen to me sometimes, where but what's helpful is I have it written down and I can see the shape of it. And then I can kind of use that shape as a map to write the second verse. I kind of know where things will fall. And so if a cool line comes to me, I can sort of see how it might fit into that little map. But yeah, that's a little bit about that one.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, it's I can imagine it's quite an exciting prospect, whereby when you're back and forth with that music, working via Dropbox, and then you have something appear in your Dropbox for you to listen to. I can imagine that's a very exciting prospect. I've been similar situation myself, and it's I don't want to say the cliche of it's like Christmas, but I suppose it is very exciting when you get that back and forth.
Definitely it's a treat. And one of the things I love about our process is, so if I write a first verse of a song, I'll share it with Philipp, and then he gets a vibe for it, and then he can continue to tweak based on kind of that vibe. And then the song comes back to me and it has a little bit more nuance and changes. And then I'm able to use that to create the next part of the song. And it's just, it really feels collaborative and creative in that way. I think it's kind of a unique style, but it works for us, and it's really inspiring.
Yeah, most certainly. It definitely does work, and it's evidenced in your music. So my next question is for you, Philipp. So this is, once again, it sort of centers around Low Battery Days, but that was 2020, and we're now in 2022, and obviously you're producing and you're coming up with the new album. Has your approach to writing, because you mentioned there for the first 4 songs, I think it was, of the album, that you weren't aware of synthwave. Has your approach to writing, or rather producing music, changed since Low Battery Days to, let's say, Choose the Machine?
Yeah, definitely. So I think one thing is what we've already talked about. I think I know more like the formula of synthwave now, and I very much use that, and sometimes I wish I wouldn't in some instances, and be a little bit more free of that, but I definitely do. But yeah, so I remember like when we wrote Low Battery Days, so when I wrote the music to it, I hated it with a passion when I first wrote it. And it was very, very different at first. It wasn't the chords that are in there now. It had a totally different chord structure. And I was really about to trash it, not to put it on the album. And then I somehow deployed my secret weapon. So I use Cthulhu, which it's a plugin by Steve Duda, the guy behind Extra Records, who released Serum, for example. And it has like these 2 modules. One is like a what would you call that? Like a chord generator, and the other one is an arpeggiator. And in combination, you can make things sound amazing very quickly. And I sometimes, so when writer's block hits me, I use that quite a lot, actually. And I remember not like taking the entire chord structure from Cthulhu, but at least having some inspiration for a new chord structure, and that really restructured the song in a way that, I ended up also that's one of my favorite songs now on the album. But I thought it was terrible for quite a while. But just changing the chords and the BPM really helped. Yeah.
That's not all that unusual for us, just in general. Where we're like, what is wrong with this song?
That sort of leads on. A question springs to mind now is when you're writing for the album then, so like say this album, the previous album, do you find then, because you mentioned there about you didn't like the song to begin with, do you find you have a huge bank of songs that you whittle down, or do you focus like narrowly focus on sort of the 8 songs that you have? How does that process work?
So, I mean, we have a lot of songs that we don't release. I think nowadays it's less and less. But from back in the days, there are like, probably 3 albums worth of songs that we haven't released, and rightfully so, I guess. But nowadays, I can't remember. So so the music for these 8 songs is written. We haven't recorded all the vocals yet. But I think out of the 8, so I think there's 1 song that we wrote and we said, let's see whether that's going to be on the album. But yeah, so that definitely has changed. So I think I know a little bit more how to, fiddle around with a song and make it nicer if I have to.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I'm well aware we're coming towards the end of the sort of the interview now. So what I want you, it's kind of a nice opportunity for you to sort of end the interview with a plug for the album. So I know we touched on earlier about the concept for the album. Maybe just like from yourself, Dan, a brief summary of what the audience can expect when it's released, and maybe if you have one, a potential sort of release time frame in mind, maybe.
Sure. Yeah. So as we mentioned, it's called Love on a Dying Planet. It's a song cycle in 8 parts. And so, yeah, we're releasing them song by song as opposed to a whole album at one time. And the story itself, as I mentioned, is a dystopian love story about a factory worker who decides he wants to become part android, and an alien scientist who comes down to his planet to try and help. There's been a drought on that planet for years, and she's coming to try and literally make rain happen again on the planet. And so unexpectedly, considering he has opted out of feelings, they fall in love, and the story goes from there. And yeah, people can follow along with it. We have on our website, which is yearofthefall.com. And there's each piece of the story will be posted on there. They're very short story blocks and the song, and there's accompanying artwork as well. So yeah, it's kind of a graphic novel vibe in terms of the look and the feel of it. And we would love people to give it a listen. You can find it obviously on our website, but also all the usual suspects, Spotify, Bandcamp, and of course at Year of the Fall on social media.
Fantastic, that's great. I've got another quick question actually, because I asked a similar question to someone I think last week with an interview, and you mentioned about a graphic novel that accompanies the music. I don't know if you've heard of a band called Coheed and Cambria. I don't know if that rings a bell at all.
I haven't.
No, I'd tell you what. Maybe it's just me, but I'm sure they're a band, for example, that they have these 2 characters and they have a graphic novel that accompanies. It's like an actual comic strip, as it were, that accompanies the music. Is that something that you think you would do in the future?
I mean, to be honest, that was kind of our dream when we started. We searched to try and find an artist that we thought would work, that we could also, we don't have a huge budget. So the people we were finding that we thought, we were like, wow, this guy's so great. And then it's like, he's working on Star Wars and Marvel. I'm like, okay, probably a little out of our league. But yeah, that's the dream. And so we found some art that we like online that we've been able to use. But I think we would still be open to working with an artist. If they're listening out there, please get in touch. I think that would be really the dream, to be able to really create it from our own imaginations.
Yeah, I think from what you've said, the way you've described the concept, I think it'd be amazing. I think it'd be fantastic to see, because the actual concept sounds so well thought out and fantastic and so poignant to the times that we live in. I think being able to have that visual representation with the music as well, I think would be absolutely incredible. So I hope it does work out, and then you find this amazing artist. It's usually one of those ones I find where it's somebody who is just like finding their feet, but is an incredible talent. Right. That's the sort of person you need to find, and I'm sure there's someone who exists somewhere. So the audience listening, if you are that person, do get in touch with Year of the Fall, and reach out to them. Please do that. And what I'll do is, you mentioned earlier, or just now, about the social media links and the web links and the song links, etc. And they'll be in the show notes for this episode, so the audience can go away and browse through those and check out all your stuff online. But Dan and Philip, a huge thanks for joining me today on the podcast. It's been great chatting to both of you about your music and how you collaborate across the Atlantic, which is amazing, and how you've been collaborating now for 20 years, which is also incredible. And good luck with the release of the new album. I'll be looking out for it, and I'll help promote and push it, and I'm sure the audience listening will check it out as well. But once again, a huge thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, man. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was really fun to talk.
Yeah, absolutely my pleasure, and I will speak to you both soon.
Bye.
Okay, sounds good.